Welcome back to the What Are You Driven By podcast. This season, we are really exploring the challenges and the changes that shaped who people are and also what drives them. So maybe you're going through a difficult time or someone you love is going through a difficult time. Our goal is that you might discover someone that went through a similar situation and can give you the strength or the insight to make it through. So make sure you subscribe to the What Are You Driven By podcast and connect with us online at Driven By Co. Now, on this episode, we have Drew Curry, who is a goal-setting strategist and youth leader for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Welcome, Drew.
Thanks for having me.
Can you take a couple minutes just to introduce yourself? Tell us more about who Drew is.
I am Drew K. Curry, and I'm a goal setting strategist based here in Nassau, Bahamas. I help professional women of faith clarify their vision, goals, and dreams so they could be able to access the life they desire. And I also have a nonprofit organization where I go into the schools here in the Bahamas to educate our seniors, our future leaders about the importance of goal setting, visualization, and personal development. I am a woman of faith, and I'm a sister, a auntie, and a dog mom.
Oh, that's lovely. Wow. You've got your work cut out for you. You've got a lot of responsibility, taking care of a lot of people at work and at home. So, how long have you been doing your work as a goal-setting strategist?
So, to be honest, I was in the field for 8 years, but I just went in to the field professionally or just more focusing on coaching 2 years ago. And the story behind that, I was a nail technician just when I came out of school, and I had my own studio. I was teaching, and being able to give women service every day, it allowed me to understand most of my clients' struggle. So for 5 years, I had the same clients, and I noticed it wasn't no growth with them. Every time they come back, they look good, they feel good, but mentally and when it comes to goals, they are stagnant. They the same place every year. So that kind of sort of like pushed me to host vision board brunch, and all of my clients would come. They would feel motivated, but I understood that after that motivation feeling, that was it. It was like nothing else
Mm.
afterwards. And I learned that, okay, they need accountability. So around that time, I was feeling a bit depressed as a nail technician. So I closed down my studio, and then I moved to South Asia. So I was living in Nepal for like a year in 2021. And I prayed, and I was like, when I come back home, I just want to focus strictly on being a goal setting strategist, helping women overcome self-doubt so they could be able to live their abundant life.
Wow. That is incredible. What a story. And, you always had that entrepreneurial nature about you. So, as a nail technician, you had your own studio. And you're right, it gives you the opportunity to connect with people as you're doing their nails. You're hearing about their story and their struggles. And then you put the dots together to say, hey, there's a need here. And how can I fulfill that need? But also,
Yeah.
I'm really interested in the fact that you lived in South Asia for a year. So, can you tell us more about that?
So, as a nail technician, I was making a lot of money, and with making money, I still was feeling depressed.
Mhm.
And that's why I tell a lot of my clients, money is a good thing, but that don't equal success. And I remember this was the middle of the beginning of the pandemic. I was in a depression state, and I was like, I just needed more. I have no kids, no debt, no big bills. What else could I do? So around that time, I was praying, fasting, and one of my spiritual mothers, she came to me and she's like, hey, if you want to, move to the UK for a year for on a missionary trip, you should do that. And I was like, okay, sounds good. So my ideal place was to go to the UK. But then the pandemic came, the UK wasn't opening their borders. And then she was like, well, something in South Asia just came up. So I'm like, South Asia, like, I don't know anything about that. And I was like, in Nepal, so that's like where Mount Everest is. That was
Oh,
like my room view every day. Where is it at
wow.
now? Yeah. So I packed my Georgie bundles and I went. Whew, saying it is so surreal right now. I went. I went on a missionary trip. I was surrounded by different culture. Like I had people living with me from Hong Kong, from Australia, from all over, all different walks of life, and it opened my eyes a lot. So it's so much more to that story, but that's basically the story there within itself. So I was there for a year. Yes.
Wow. You must have learned so much in that 1 year.
Listen, yes. First of all, culture shock is a real thing. The Western world and the Eastern world live differently. The Western world focus on the material gain. The Eastern world focus on family values and structure. And that, like, they might seem poor on the Eastern world, but they rich with family, and that's something I learned.
Mm.
And then living in a flat with different communities, different culture, especially me being a Caribbean girl, it was really difficult, but I understand that not every community, sorry, every culture is different in a beautiful way. So from the Caribbean, we more outspoken, we express our thoughts. My flatmate who lived in Hong Kong, where she grew up, one person speaks for the entire tribe. So when I spoke up for my feelings, she thought I was being disrespectful because she didn't grow up in that. So it was like a lot of heads being bucked because of the culture, if that makes
Wow.
sense. Yeah. But the food was good. I built a lot of connections. God did a lot of work in me, and it was beautiful. It was hard. It was hard, but it was beautiful because the lifestyle was different.
Yeah, and you're probably a much bigger person for that experience. And I love that you pointed out the fact that in the East, we're really focused on material objects
The
and
West, the
financial
West
gain.
we
Or
focus
sorry,
on, yeah.
yes, yes, in the West, exactly. And it's true because I think that we're very lonely in the West. And we look to our neighbors, well, across the world, and you're right, although they might not have the luxuries that we have, like they are rich in family, and those relationships are there, and people are very quick to help one another, the smallest of things. And here it's like we feel like we have to do everything by ourselves.
Yeah, you are definitely. And someone asked me a question. They were like, how do you see the Western world, or how do you see yourself being poor and then the Nepalese being rich? And when I thought about it, I was like, I don't consider myself being poor. But when I literally like dig deep, I poor with family, like they live together, they eat together, they don't have much distractions like the Western world. So they eat as a family. Like we don't do that. I eat in my room, my mommy eat in her room, and it's like poor. So they really rich over there if you really think about it, and we
Hmm.
the lonely ones, like you say, just trying to do everything ourselves, thinking we have to do everything ourselves, but we
Hmm.
were built for community.
Yes, it's so true. It's so true because we're always looking for something that connection that we can't seem to find, and we can't really communicate it either. So it's a really interesting point just to see that, there's people who have it figured out and we can learn a thing or two from them. But
Yeah.
speaking about learnings, I was going to ask you, I know you've had a ton of experience in your life, but is there a particular experience in your life that taught you the biggest lesson?
Yes. Wow, a lot of experience, but I could just pinpoint one, the biggest lesson. When I first came out of school, I grew up in a culture where as they tell you to get good grades in school, go to college, get a government job, go on 2 weeks vacation each year, and then retire and then die. So I was in that mindset. And I think that's the Western world mindset if I put all of that together. Yeah, I was in that mindset. But when I came out of school, I was a big people pleaser. And I went to college to study tourism and hospitality management. And I dropped out of college after 2 years because I learned that it wasn't for me. But what happened in that season was I was working at this cafe. I was making $4.50 an hour, and wow, just to say that is crazy. $4.50 an hour, $180 a week. That's crazy.
Wow.
But but around that time, I started to learn about my values and just being understanding that not fate, sorry, fair. Like you could grow through fair. It's uncomfortable, but it's still something you could grow through. And I'm saying this because that same dropping out of college and then working at a minimum wage job, because I was so uncomfortable, I had to make a decision to become a nail technician full time. And through that process, it was like a thug, like, what if I don't do it? What if no one support me? What if I can't come? Like I can't pay my rent. Like what if? But the biggest lesson is going through fair. Like you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. And I had to
Mhm.
keep telling myself that, like, Drew, you have to make a move or you might still be here. So I think like that season kind of built, like, even with me going to Nepal, I feel like that season when I was younger built me for that, because it's like change is going to happen whether you like it or not, Drew, so you better get it together and just pray and just move on faith. So that story kind of set the foundation for everything now what happened in my life. For me to be what 20, I think I was like 24 when I went Nepal. That was, yeah, I was 24 and I jumped on a plane by myself, cross the country, well, across the world, I should say. It was because of that girl who was working at a cafe and she just wanted something different. She took that risk, even though she did it with fear, and a beautiful tree grew in that situation. So for me, fear is just going through it, fear, we fear feeling, but you still have to do it because change can happen whether you like it or not. So just go through it.
Mhm. I love that. And I think you're right. I think we grow up in a world where there's so many expectations around what we're supposed to do and what our path is supposed to look like. So as soon as you're no longer on that path, it's very scary. But I love that you were able to get comfortable with the uncomfortable and sit there and recognize, okay, I'm uncomfortable right now. I'm scared of possible outcomes. However, what action am I going to take to get to where I could be? What's my
Mm-hmm.
potential in this? So I love that. And I think that is an important lesson that, sometimes people won't learn that because, they find that the path is something that they don't want to stray from, the path that our society lays out for us. They don't want to stray from that. And that's fine. And it works for some people. It doesn't work for everyone because there are many people on that path that don't want to be on that path. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but having
Mm-hmm.
not wanting to go through that fear is preventing them from straying.
What I
So,
learned too is it's the community we put ourselves in.
hmm
Because in that season, people around me was saying that don't make sense. Like, you want to be a nail technician. First of all, nail technician don't make money. That's what some of the things what people was telling me. So the fear of my own fear and insecurities and someone else pouring their fear and insecurities in me kind of
yeah.
was, it paralyzed me. But because I still was in a community where it was like, what you have to lose, just do it, So I'm saying community because we subconsciously become a product of our environment. So if a lot of people don't want to like step out with unfair because they surrounded and they only surround themselves with people who don't want to do it, and no one doing the not normal things. So they just sit down doing the normal things, what people think is normal. But
hmm
it's the community. But yeah, fair, it was a big thing for me. And I'm grateful that I still go through it, even though like I'm a coward, but I still go through it.
hmm
And it turned out
Hey,
good at the end of the day.
I love that. I love that you said that. And I love that you made the connection between what's normal and your environment because whatever environment you're in is that's what's normal for you. So you
Yeah.
change your environment and you change what's normal for you. So you
Yeah.
change your whole outcome. That's amazing. Now, okay, so let's talk about the hard times for a second here. So can you share a time where you felt that your motivation was gone? It was simply non-existent. And were you able to identify what was blocking that motivation in that time?
When my motivation was gone and non-existent. Wow. I think I will basically talk about recently this year. This year, so every year I have an event, and this year I did things a little different. And my goal was to have a certain amount of people in the room. And it just, a part of it, I just felt like I couldn't do it anymore. Like I didn't have anything to give. Like I had no motivation, I had no courage, I had nothing to give because I felt that, again, me being a coward, I felt like I can't do it. And I learned that, like, in that season, so I wanted to have an event. I had a certain amount, but no one was actually, purchasing the tickets, no one was doing anything. And then I lost my motivation. And I remember just consistently hearing no, 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 no. And I just felt defeated and I just started crying. Like, I'm a crybaby. One thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cry. And I just started crying. And I think something in me remembered everything what I went through. And it's like I gave it one more try. And then I finally got that yes, if that makes
Ah.
sense. So it's like I heard 20 no's. Literally everyone told me no, 20 no's. And then I gave up and I'm like, I just lost motivation just to have 20 no's back to back to back to back. Like that was a lot on me, but it was something in me just what reminded me about like how far I came, like all of the stories we kind of, it's like you went through so much, like just one more call. Like if someone say no, okay, just one more call, we could get a yes. And I lost motivation in that. And I think what that what that teach me was one, consistency. Two, I journal a lot. I don't know if you journal. So
Oh
it
yeah.
brings me to a place where I have to read my journals to see where
I love journaling.
it bring me to a place where I have to read my journal because I journal to myself. I'd be like, Dad Drew, or I'd be like, Girl Drew, today was this day and this. And just reading over that, it gave me motivation to say, see, you did it before and you could do it again. So definitely, like, it's a lot of times where I lose motivation, but I had to understand too that motivation is a feeling, and you have to be disciplined. Like motivation keep get us started, but consistency and discipline keep us going. So I lost motivation a lot, but it's times where I just have to like bounce back up and be like, you know what, let's just do it again from a different angle. And then again,
Mhm.
the people who pour into me, I'm grateful for my circle because when I don't have the motivation, I have to use their motivation, if that makes sense. Like when they talking to me, it's like, Drew, you got this, just one more. Like, let's do this, you got this. And then I started to feel good. So yeah, that's basically my story when it comes to losing motivation. Just hearing 20 no's until I got that one yes. And that one yes gave me the confidence to continue to go.
I think we can all find ourselves in those situations where things aren't working out as we necessarily thought they would. And it takes a hit on our motivation. We start to believe that, am I doing something wrong? Am I not capable? So I think you're right. I think motivation goes up and down. And in the times when we're down, I love that you look to other sources of motivation. You look to the times when you were doing well, looking through your journal, looking for your environment and the people around you who were pouring into you. Like, just sourcing different pieces to get you going, knowing that it wasn't going to be forever, knowing that even though things weren't working out right now, there was still a yes on the horizon. So that's amazing. And I think we all need to remember that. I think it's hard to remember that when we're
It is hard.
in the
It's
depths,
definitely hard because you
right?
have to go through it right then.
Yes.
Definitely
Yes.
hard.
Exactly, exactly. It's hard, but I think that people needed to hear that. So thank you for sharing that because, no matter how many no's you get, there is a yes on the horizon. It's just a matter of,
Mm-hmm.
are you going to keep going to go find it?
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. That's a great story. Now, with all the projects that you've worked on, since your journey began, is there something specific that makes you feel engaged in a goal or a project? What is it that keeps your energy there, keeps you engaged?
So this is the question, what I'm driven by, basically.
Not yet. That's a surprise
What
for later.
what keeps me engaged basically is knowing where I came from and wanting to help other people, or like I have this thing on my vision board that say someone somewhere is dependent on you to do what God called you to do. So I feel like a lot of people share my story growing up with a single parent, saying you could, the normal, you wouldn't do this, you wouldn't do that, you can't do this. And then growing up on the Western world where they're telling you, just get good grades, do this, do that, whatever. But I think what keeps me going is knowing that a lot of people out there haven't heard my voice yet. And my story is powerful to them. Like my story is my power, my highs, my lows is something that can encourage someone else. And even being like a coach, being able to help my clients just to see that transformation, like that keep me going because it's a lot of people who need to know the knowledge what we have. Like a lot of people out there just winging it out. Like they honestly living on a hamster wheel. And it's like, come on, girl. It's so much more to life. So just knowing that you have a lot of people who have sight but still blind with vision, that keeps me going. That really keeps me going.
Ooh, that was a line right there. People who have sight but are still blind. Yes.
That keeps me going. Yeah. If I'm being
Amazing.
honest, that keeps me going.
So it's like you're holding on to this greater purpose when you're working on these projects or engaged in your goals. It's that higher purpose and the impact that you're going to have that's keeping you engaged in the moment. Because even though it might not feel like you're reaching all of those people in the moment, taking that action is important, like you said.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And then I think like I don't know if you ever had a thought whereas you want to be the person you never had to your younger self. You know, like if I had someone like me when I was young, I feel like I would have been further mentally, like my mindset shift would have been on a different level. So now having all of this in me, just being there for that next young girl who thinks she's in it alone, who probably face insecurities, who face people pleasing, who face just feeling low, no motivation, just feeling low. It's like my story could help her. And it's like I always saying, like I just praying for the opportunity to be able to like what I'm doing now, share my story, be able to motivate or encourage someone. So that really keeps me going. And I feel like I was reading a book and it said that when you die, what would you want your eulogy to say about you? Like what
Mm,
you would want the obituary to say, you know? And I try to live by that because we ain't here for long. Um,
mhm. Yeah. Wow, that's really impactful. That's really powerful. And it just brought me back to my younger days and I'll share this really quickly. But I'm mixed race, so my parents are of two different cultures. And growing up, that was very difficult for me to understand like where my place was and where I belonged. And if I just had someone who at the time when things were happening to me and I was going through situations, I just didn't have the words or the understanding to deal with where I was. So now in the work that I do, I'm often there for students, giving them some understanding and some perspective, much needed when I was younger. So I agree. If there was someone doing the work that I was doing when I was younger, I also feel like I would have made a huge jumps a lot earlier in my life. But
mhm.
you alluded to your story as well. So if is there any details that you wanted to share specific to, your story and how you got here?
Wow. So I grew up in a single home with my mom and my sister. My dad left when I was in grade 5. Um, I just grew up always feeling like I'm not good enough. Like I feel like you ever had a story with the ugly duckling or the black sheep of the family? I felt like that was me, you know? And I learned that because people always talk down to me, that their words became my life, my reality. Like I accept that and I walk in that. So I walk in the girl who wasn't doing good in school. I walk with the girl who's ugly, who's black, who have the natural hair. Because back then, I'm grateful for this black beauty thing. Because back then it was just light skinned girls. It was y'all light skinned mixed girls, everyone. Yeah. So that kind of played a lot on my insecurities. And I learned now that everyone learned differently. So all of us are different animals in a sense of education, the way we take in information. And a snake cannot get up the tree like how a monkey could. But in the school system, they still grade all of us or test all of us the same way. And I learned that I'm more of a visual learner. So people used to tease me a lot in school. So just imagine me growing up from preschool to primary school to junior school, senior school, everyone like making me feel down. That became me. And it wasn't a point recently, like I'm really grateful that the pandemic caused a lot of pain, but for some people, it brought stillness for us to actually evaluate to see where we need to go. And I feel like the pandemic gave me that place to say, okay, Drew, what you want for yourself. Because the road you on, the road was you looking for love. My daddy wasn't there. My mommy was always working. So I felt abandoned. And
Mm.
when women feel that way, the only thing they now do is go looking for that. So I look for that most of my life. And it's funny because I just was talking to my community about this morning and not a Christmas season. I don't like the Christmas season, but
Oh no.
nevertheless, No, I don't. I don't like it. It's like, again, love and family, something I did not grow up with.
Right.
Now everyone around me have it, so it's like a traumatizing experience still. But that's something I have to like outgrow because I know when I have my personal family, I want to create new memories. But to like put a cap on the story, I just felt like I wasn't good enough. I was living a life to please everyone. So if someone say A, I would have just do A. If someone say B, I would have do what they say because I wanted to please them. And it wasn't until like I was in a meaningless relationship. They didn't see my value. I didn't even see my value. I just was out there like wilding, like just trying to do anything to just feel accepted, feel like. And the pandemic came and then it was a pause. I went into therapy for about 2 to 3 years, and then I started to learn that the reason your mom and your dad wasn't there was because they never had no one there to be for them. So how could they give you love if they never receive it or they don't even know what it is? So it was like things I had to like learn. And I think it was someone who told me that even if being broken isn't your fault, the repair is still your responsibility. So I was in a season of just trying to repair, and that kind of created this person who now want to help other people who in that season to know that it's more than that. You don't just have to chase a relationship. You could focus on your values, focus on your standards, focus on your morals, because we live in a world where they normalizing just being the next city girl and just doing what you got to do, and so it's my duty to help other women who trying to go down that lane. Like, no, you have more to you. You have people out there praying for someone like you just to hear your story. And that's what, that's basically my story in a nutshell. So that's what
Wow.
keep me in that space of going.
Wow. That is very, thank you for sharing that. That was very vulnerable. And I heard a lot of, the abandonment and how that affected your self-worth. And, I think growing up, we all go through different types of pain. And it's, what you went through might not look like what I went through. But I just know that from your story alone, we're not equipped to deal with the things that we're faced with a lot of the time when we're younger. And it's not until we're older that we realize or have these realizations or new perspectives about what happened to us and that it's not our fault, you know? And I
Mm-hmm.
think I recognize that in your story about, especially when you realized with your parents how they weren't shown the love, so they weren't able to model or demonstrate that for you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's tough, and I'm sure there's many people listening to this right now who have gone through that, and perhaps they've never made that realization about their parents, right? And maybe they're in a cycle of just blaming their parents and saying, "I'm like this because of them. I'm like this because of them." But like you said, even if you're broken, the repair is still your responsibility. And it's only
Yeah.
beneficial to you and the people around you and the people that you impact. So that was beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing that. So my next question is based on everything that you've shared. This is my favorite question, as you know, and as everyone who is listening knows. What are you driven by?
What I driven by? Wow. This kind of is a deep question if you really think about it. Like like when you ask someone this, they probably could just quickly answer, but you really have to sit down and be like, what am I driven by? I have no tissue next to me, so you can't make me cry right now, okay? And I want to stay moisturized. What am I driven by? I am driven by the young girl who thought she wasn't good enough. I'm driven by, wow, family, um, just breaking a generational curse. I'm driven by the future generation of this world. That's what I'm driven by.
Wow. Wow. I felt like I was envisioning all that with you. I felt the power in your words, like the meaning in your words. And I just was envisioning from past to future, from the young girl who didn't have, the words to the future of what could be. So um, I was really following that. So that was a beautiful visual. And I think
Thank
you're
you.
absolutely right. Like I ask this question a lot. And I get a variety of answers. And some people are just quick to say, I'm driven by this, I'm driven by that, without giving it much thought. And I think it's in the thought process, understanding the deep level of your motivation and why you do what you do. There's so much power in that because now you can understand, am I really on the right path here? If this is what I'm driven by, yet I'm doing something completely unrelated that's not going to allow me to achieve these things, how can I stay motivated? How can I do this long term? So, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast because that was what this conversation was meant to uncover what are our true motivations, and whether it's from the difficult times or maybe the happy times, what is it that keeps us going on this path? So, speaking of happiness, my next question is, let's bring it back up. Let's bring the energy back up. And what do you think people need in life in order to be happy? And I think you're going to have a really great perspective on this because you've lived in multiple places in the world. You've seen different cultures. So take it away. What do you think people need in life to be happy?
I feel that people need two things in life to be happy. First of all, they need a purpose. They need a purpose and they need a plan, because you made an example of some people just answer the question, what am I driven by, not giving it a thought, even though they saying they're driven by this, their actions basically saying something else, meaning that they ain't truly living in their purpose because both things ain't lining up. And if you don't live in your purpose, you ride the hamster wheel. Something we was talking, you run on the hamster wheel, you run on the way the world tell you to go instead of creating your own path. So one is purpose, and the second one is community. It's family. Like you you could have all the money, you could have all the fame, you could have all the success, whatever the individual define as success. But at the end of the day, you want to have a community, family. And when I say family, it don't even have to be like blood, but just a group of people who you could laugh, who you could cry, who support you. And this is an example of living in South Asia. Like they did not have the material things, but the family, the food, the sitting down laughing. And over there, it's so crazy that they don't even have like TVs in the house. They literally entertain each other. And it's like, that's a rich culture. That's a culture who ain't distracted, but it's family, it's family driven. And I feel like a lot of people, I know a few people who have the money, who have the success, and I air quote success for people who can't see us. They don't have family and they're basically dying inside.
Yeah.
So for me, it's purpose and family, just living for something. Don't just live to work to pay bills, but living for that purpose, like just go after what it is you want, solve that problem, and then have a beautiful family to back you up, to celebrate you, to go down the hard times and the high times with. So
Hmm.
purpose and family.
Yeah. Wow. I had a lot of realizations as you were speaking. And here in Canada, I don't know if you know, but housing right now is very expensive. Well, a lot of things are really expensive right now. So I just noticed that so many people are focused on just, making enough money to pay their rent or to, get the house that they're dreaming of one day or paying off their mortgage, all these things. And when we come home from all that hard work, we put on the TV and we don't talk. We just watch the TV. There's maybe sports on, there's maybe Netflix on, but we're just kind of numbing ourselves and entertaining ourselves with these things. And then we go to bed and we do it all over again. And yet, when you mention that these people are entertaining each other, like that's so creative. That is so creative. And maybe we're losing that by being
Definitely
distracted
we
all the
are.
time.
The
Yeah.
Western world, like that's an this a next, we can't go down this hole, but it's a next podcast for itself. But the
Yeah.
Western world is solely like we were conditioned to think certain things make sense. But when you step back out of it, it's like we just need purpose and family. That's it. Like everything else is just a distraction. And you're right. Imagine my mommy going to work, and there's something that was like when I talk about family, this where some people have the traumatizing experience. Your daddy ain't there, or your mommy and your daddy gone to work, you to school, you home by yourself because you're probably the only child. When they come home, you want to spend time with them. They frustrated. They pushing you away. Leave me alone. I just came from work. What that do to me
Yeah.
as a little child? Like what I have to grow up with now, the trauma you just put on me because of your job. But that's a vast majority of the Western world. And it's crazy. And then they growing up kids like me to have traumatizing situations, and then it's a repeated cycle. So in the Eastern world, yeah, little things was a little different, but we were playing soccer outside. We were building clay houses. Like we were milking cows, and it was beautiful. Picking the rice and stuff. It was really beautiful. And then I had a chance to teach people English. Well, the much English I know because the Nepalese language, but we it's crazy in the Western world, and I just pray that we continue to wake up. We are being distracted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love how you summed that up. No, that was perfect. That was perfect. And speaking of summing things up, I want to ask you, based on your experience, what advice do you want to leave our listeners with?
What advice I would want to leave the listeners with? First of all, um, honestly, we are 34 days away from 2024, and I basically would love for everyone to like reflect on their past 2 to 3 years and use that insight to see how they could build a beautiful 5 years, ahead. Um, and like I always telling my clients, and I think I said it today, you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. Even if you don't know what you're driven by, I feel like if you could sit down and reflect, that could give you some sort of insight, some sort of evaluation to discover something. And once you discover that, do a little bit, one day at a time until you get to where you need to be. But live, love, smile, like spend time with family, forgive yourself for your past hurt. If you need a community, I sure you have a community in Canada for people. Even I was Googling you too, searching you up, and you have your YouTube videos. Like listen to what Driven by Co have to offer because it's valuable information to shift your mindset. And we going into a new year. So if you don't want to see yourself in 2025, just where you was or where you are now in 2023, you have to know what you are driven by, and to do that you need to reflect and really ask yourself, where do I see myself in 5 years, and what am I going to do to get there, and who am I going to surround myself with to hold me accountable to that vision. And
Mhm.
you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get
Be
started to be
to
great.
be great. I love it. I wanted to say that with you. It was amazing. Well, thank you so much, Drew, for joining us on the podcast. Oh, and where can our listeners find you if they want to get connected?
So I am on Instagram, Drew Christon. That's DrewKhriston. And my website is Drew Christon, www.drewkHriston. So I'm just on Instagram and my website currently. Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so you heard it here first. Connect with Drew online on Instagram at her website. So again, Drew, thank you so much for joining us on the What Are You Driven By podcast, for all your vulnerability, all your insight, and all your experience. We appreciate it. So all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in to the What Are You Driven By podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode.